installation of the camshafts. Obviously you need to lube up all those buckets, so I'm going to use this assembly lube. You could use oil of course, but I think I'm just going to be a bit safer with the assembly lube. Okay, so here we have it. Now another thing to mention is there's going to be 8 dowel pins that you have to have in the cylinder head. So it's going to be, I mean, some of them will be in the head, some of them will be in the cam holders, because when you pull them out they tend to stay in the cam holders. But basically it's those 2 here, those 2 here, those 2 here, and those 2 here. So it's 8 in total. And I've double checked, I've got 1 here, 1 here, and then 6 in the cam holders. So I'm good in that respect. And now let's install the camshafts. Alright, so here we have one of the camshafts fully lubed up, so I thought maybe I'll just lube it first and show you what I did. So not only I've lubed up the journals, also I've lubed up the lobes and this ring here. So now I can just put this camshaft in, and obviously orientation matters. You've got the cam timing marks here. And this cam is it intake or exhaust? Let's have a look. That's the exhaust cam. So obviously that's going to go towards the front here. So now I'm going to lube up the second cam and we'll continue. Intake cam also fully lubed up. I can position the intake cam inside. Okay, and now it's going to be the hardest part, making sure the timing is correct. Alright, so setting up this timing. So I've turned the engine so you can see what's going on here. So this rotor here is positioned in a way that the T mark is pointing towards the pickup coil. This is how I disassembled the engine. So the first piston here is in the top dead center position, and when I disassembled the engine, those 2 lobes here, first lobes were pointing towards each other. So now I'm going to have to change the position of both actually to make sure they're pointing towards each other. And now the whole deal will be to make sure that the timing marks are in exactly the same position after I've put some tension on the chain and bolted down. Alright, so I'm going to install the cam holders now. Same on those 2. And here, excellent. I'll put some of it there as well, just in case. Alright. I've put some little rag here, and this is because there's still this big gap in the engine. If you drop something there at that point, it's a bad day, and don't ask me how I know this. Anyway, so before I start torquing those little bolts up, I'm gonna also lube them up in oil. Okay, there we go. Okay, so all the bolts are nice and snug. I'm not going to torque them up yet because I need to install the cam chain tensioner, and then I'm going to spin the engine to make sure that the timing is correct. If I can spin the engine and the timing is correct, then I can torque them all up. Okay, so here we have the cam chain tensioner. So to assemble the cam chain tensioner, let's just make sure there's some oil in there, and there is, but just in case I'm going to put a tad more. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, the cam chain has a lot of slack, So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tap on this here. There's a guide which, when you push on it, will take the slack away. I've got a spring inside and some oil. And let's not forget that we need a gasket for that. So the gasket goes on like that. There's the gasket there. And now I'm gonna put the plunger in. So that's the way it goes in. And then we've got those two little screws that go in there and secure the tensioner to the block. Alright, so I'm just gonna make a few turns. I'm gonna have to push this plunger in and turn the big nut. I've got no spark plugs in there. Now I'm gonna grab this 19mm wrench, and hopefully I'll be able to rotate the engine, well, at least a few times, just to make sure that the timing is correct and the valve isn't stopping the piston. Cross the fingers. Right, so it seems like I'm gonna be good because the engine is spinning and I don't feel any particular resistance. So the T mark is pointing towards the pickup coil, and I've got the number 1 arrow being flush with the surface of the head. Let me just magnify it, hopefully you'll be able to see this. And then I've got arrows number 2 and 3 pointing exactly upwards. And let's now count the links, not the links, sorry, the pins between arrow number 2 and arrow number 3, and it should be 13. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. At that point I can now finally torque up those bolts here. They don't take much, it's only 10 Newton meters. And again, we've got to do it with the sequence. So I'm going to start here. That's 10. That's 10. All right. And again here. Right, this is all nicely torqued up. I'm not going to be putting the oil pipes in yet because what I've got to do now is checking the valve clearance.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm back. So I've checked the clearance, and unfortunately, I mean, it's not really that unfortunate. I've got 6 valves to be readjusted. I've got 2 valves on the exhaust and 1, 2, 3 and 4 on the intake. All of them a bit too tight. Broadly speaking, it's not bad. So here I have it. I bought 6 new shims, different sizes, and I'm going to replace them now. And then I'm going to check the clearance, and hopefully after that I'm going to be able to finally finish this off. Alright, so remove the tensioner now. And of course, I'll now have to remove the holders. Put them here for a moment. Come on. Okay, let's get those off. Alright, first one comes out. And so the shim in there is that one here. So the shim that I've removed was 188, and what's going to go in is 180. Alright, so same as always, a bit of oil in there, and you put the shim with the numbers facing upwards, and that goes in. Next one is this here, again 188, or in fact no, that was 190 actually, and what I'm going to put in is 185. All right. That was a very quick swap of the shims, so now I'm gonna reinstall the camshafts. That's 10. That's 10. Okay peeps, so this is now time to put this valve cover back on. So I've cleaned it nicely inside. I've got all the gaskets here present, and the main gasket here. Okay, so I'm just going to reinstall that. Right, so I got some RTV here. I'm not going to use much, of course. It's just a smear here. This is what the cover looks like. I spent some time recovering it because it looked a lot worse. Now it looks really lovely. So now I'm making sure I install it the right way, which is that way. Okay, everything nicely aligned. So now I'm going to be installing those little gaskets. That's what they look like. They're made of a very hard rubber, or I think there's a metal ring inside and it's covered by plastic or rubber. And Suzuki say to smear it lightly with oil, so that's what I'm gonna do. And now I'll be able to install the valve cover bolts, which I've also painted. Now I've turned the engine. This is the alternator side, and as you can see there I've got a blank hole, and this is to accommodate the starter motor. So this is the starter motor. Interestingly, this is the same motor that powers RF 900 and RF 600 and GSXR 1100, and I believe also GSXR 750W, so very universal. So before I install it, I'll just as always smear this orifice with oil. And also, I'm going to gently lube that O-ring here. Come on, you bugger. There we go. I could feel a click. And it sits there. The starter motor secures here by those two bolts. Because I'm going to be checking the compression on this newly built engine, I'm going to have to flood it with oil now. So here we have the new oil going in. Hey folks, so in today's video I'm going to be checking the compression of this newly built GSXR RF hybrid engine. I've got the starter motor installed, the gold bit there. I've got my battery here, motor about 12 volts motorcycle battery. This is RF900 battery, which is I think a bit too weak to actually turn 1100 motor, but I fully charged it. I've got 12.8 volts on it now, so hopefully it's going to be okay. This is my setup. I'm going from the positive terminal on the battery on this red cable to the starter's cable. So this is the cable coming out from the starter, and then that goes to the positive terminal on the battery. On the negative, I've got the black cable, and then I'm gonna hook it up to that bolt here on the engine as a ground. Alright then, here's my compression tester. Cheap Chinese compression tester, £15 on eBay. Before I install it, I just made sure that this adapter is really tightly installed on this hose, because what can happen is, if it's not tight enough, you'll screw it in the spark plug hole, and then when you screw it out, it stays there and just the hose come out, and then it's a bad day. I've had this before. So I've nicely lubed this O-ring here at the bottom. Alright, so this is once again cylinder number 1, and let's see. Okay, and what we got is 160. There we go, as you can tell, 160 psi. And let's go for it again. This one is actually 165 psi. Let me magnify it. Whoop. So as you can see, this one is 165 psi.